Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today we're going to be doing a Mimighoul deck profile. So I'm really excited to do some for you guys because this deck is our new TCG exclusive that we just got out of Infinite Forbidden. It's super fun to be able to play because it actually focuses around flip effect monsters. So without further ado, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards. Like getting your name description in every single video, getting get signed cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're playing 3 copies of Mimighoul Master. This card is definitely a 3-up in the build because this card has an awesome effect that it cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effect while your opponent controls any face down monsters, or you control a Mimighoul monster other than this card. And you can only use each of the following effects this card once per turn. That if this card is normal or special summon, you can actually add a Mimighoul monster from your deck to your hand, except another copy of this card, basically being the Stratos of the deck. Also, during your opponent's main phase, quick effect, you can actually change one face down defense potion monster on the field to face up attack or defense potion, flipping the mimics on your opponent's side of the field face up to be able to get them back on our side of the field and give our opponent a crazy effect. We then play 3 copies of Mimighoul Dragon. Dragon is the best mimic in the entire deck so far for our first wave of support, but all of your different Mimighoul monsters actually share a common effect that during the main phase, you can special summon this card from your hand to your opponent's field and face down defense position, basically setting these cards on your opponent's side of the field and handing them a treasure chest that actually has a mimic inside. But this card is really neat because when it's flipped face up, during the main phase, you can apply these effects in sequence to destroy all face up monsters that you control except Mimighoul monsters, and then give control of this card to your opponent, basically handing this card back to us and destroying all of our opponent's face up monsters, which is a really cool effect just to be able to board wipe your opponent's monsters. This card also has the ability that if this card is normal or special summon, you can actually add a Mimighoul spell or trap from your deck to your hand, which is a great effect because we have some really cool cards you can actually search off of Dragon's effect. We then play 3 copies of Archfiend. Archfiend is definitely a 3-up in the build as well, and this card helps out a lot overall, as this card has the ability, if this card is flipped face up during the main phase, your opponent draws a card, meaning we draw a card, you send a card from your hand to the graveyard, meaning the opponent's going to send a card from their hand to the graveyard, and then we get this card back, which is really cool to instantly get this card back to our side of the field. And all the Mimighoul monsters actually share the effect that when they're flipped up, the last effect that's actually activated is we get the card back, which is really neat. This card also has, if this card is normal or special summon, you can actually change a face down defense potion monster on the field to face up attack or defense potion, helping you flip up your copy of Dragon on your opponent's side of the field so you can destroy their monsters, which is the main strategy of the deck, to basically hand your opponent a copy of Dragon, send it to their side of the field, normal summon out your copy of your Archfiend or your copy of your Master, and flip it up on your opponent's side of the field so you can destroy your opponent's cards using Dragon's effect. We then play just a single copy of Cerberus. I feel like one Cerberus is really all you need. This card doesn't do all that much, which is why I just play a single copy. This card is usually during the main phase. If it's flipped face up, you banish the top 3 cards of your deck, then special summon one of the banished monsters to your opponent's side of the field in defense position, which if nothing gets banished that's a monster, you don't get to summon anything, which is why I just play a single copy of this card. It also has the ability that your opponent cannot target face-up spells that you control with card effects, giving us a little bit of protection when this card does get given back to us on our side of the field. It's okay as a 1-up in the build, but I don't feel like you need any more than a single copy. We then also play a single copy of Guard Dog. Guard Dog is really interesting as a 1-up tech in this particular deck because of our copy of Mimighoul Maker. Then when this card is flipped face up, your opponent cannot special summon for the rest of the turn, which is a really cool effect to basically hand this card and put this card on our side of the field and then flip it face up on our opponent's turn to basically make it so that your opponent cannot special summon for the rest of the turn, which is a really good effect to basically lock down the opponent and just helps out a lot overall in this deck. I feel like 1 is really all you need in this deck, but it's a really cool tech card in this build. We then play 3 copies of Kashtira Fenrir. Since we are handing our opponent a lot of different monsters, we really can easily summon this card out to our side of the field, and it's just really good overall because it can search another copy of itself from our deck to our hand. It spot removes cards off the field, and if we don't control a monster, we can special summon this card from your hand. And since the majority of our Mimighoul monsters, all the treasure chests actually hand themselves to the opponent, it's really easy to basically just hand a treasure chest to the opponent and end with a copy of Fenrir and a copy of Master to be able to flip up the monsters on your opponent's side of the field, which will make your copy of Fenrir go off because the opponent activated a monster effect, so you can spot remove a card off the field. I really feel like this card is amazing in this build, and the Kashtira cards work really good in this deck. We then also play 3 copies of Shifter. Shifter is definitely a 3 of in this build as well, because Shifter is just amazing because we really don't care about the graveyards. This card, it helps out a lot to basically just instantly win games, especially in graveyard reliant decks. This card just instantly win games. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to start with a single copy of Terraforming. Terraforming is really good as a 1-of in the build to help us get to our copy of Dungeon. We then play a single copy of Instant Fusion. Instant Fusion is really good in the deck as 1-of, so we can summon out Master of Ham, one of the best monsters ever created. We then play 2 copies of Triple Tactics Thrust. Thrust is really good in the deck as a 2-of because since our opponent is going to activate a monster effect when the Mimighoul is flipped face up, it makes your copy of Thrust live so we can search out the exact cards that we need. This card is really good in the deck overall, and since the opponent is going to control a monster as well, we can also use this card's effect to add the card to our hand so we can actually use it, which is really powerful. We then play 2 copies of Talent. Talent is really good in the deck as a 2-of to basically just use the same way as your copy of Thrust, so since the opponent is going to activate a monster effect in the form of a Mimighoul, we actually get to use this card's effect to either draw 2, take control of an opponent's monster, or we get to look at our opponent's hand and shuffle a card from their hand back into the deck, which is a really good effect to instantly get a card off the or basically out of our opponent's hand so they don't have a hand trap or a key combo piece, basically making this card a definite 2-of in the build. This is actually a 41 card deck, so you can drop the copies of Thrust for more budget options if you want to, like another copy of Talent, and then just drop the other copy to basically make it a perfect 40. We then play 3 copies of Mimighoul Maker. Maker is amazing as a 3-of in the build. This card is so cool in this deck. Plus, it kind of looks like the chests that were in Spyro the Dragon, the original game. If you guys ever played that, these cards actually look like the treasure chest on it, look like the little chest that you would actually break to be able to get a life, if you guys have ever seen that, which is really neat. So what this card actually does is you reveal 2 flip monsters with different names from your deck. Your opponent randomly picks one of them to special summon to their field in face down defense position, and then you get to add the other to your hand. Then you can special summon a Mimighoul monster from your hand to your side of the field, which is a really interesting effect, especially since this card actually searches cards like Guard Dog from your deck to your hand, which is really cool, but it is kind of a 50-50 chance to be able to get that to go off, but if it does, you instantly win the game usually. This card also has the ability, if your opponent special summons a monster except during the damage step, you can actually banish this card from the graveyard, target a face down monster that your opponent controls, and change it to face up attack or defense position, which is a really cool effect to basically flip up a monster, one of your Mimighouls that your opponent controls. We then play 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity. Pot of Prosperity is just really good at helping you dig into the deck for the exact cards that you need. We then play 3 copies of Summoning Curse. This card is fire in this deck. This card is so good in this deck. This card has the ability, when a monster is special summoned, the controller of that monster chooses a card from their hand and banishes it. And also during each of your end phases, you pay 500 life points or destroy this card. So this card is hilarious in the deck. When you activate this card on your side of the field, you hand your opponent a Mimighoul, and since they control a monster that was just special summoned, they do have to send a card and banish it from their hand, which just gets rid of cards out of their hand. If you hand them 2 Mimighouls from your hand to their side of the field, you're just instantly going to get rid of 2 cards out of their hand, meaning they're going to start with less cards in their hand, which is just really powerful. This card is amazing in the deck as a 3-of and just so good in this deck. It's really amazing. We then play 3 copies of Dungeon. Mimighoul Dungeon is definitely a 3-of in the build, and this card is just really good overall as a field spell because Mimighoul monsters that you control that were not normal or special summoned this turn gain attack equal to their original defense, which is really good because it'll help you boost your copy of your dragon up to 2,500 attack points. It'll boost your copy of Master up to 3,000 attack points. It'll boost your copy of Cerberus up to 22, and your copy of Archfiend will just become a 1,900 because it does have 0 attack. This card also has a really cool effect that any player who controls a face down monster cannot normal summon monsters nor declare attacks with monsters that were special summoned this turn, which is a great effect to lock down your opponent, forcing them to flip up the Mimighouls. Also, during your main phase, you can add a Mimighoul monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand, which is a great effect to instantly add the exact Mimighoul you want or be able to grab one out of the graveyard like a copy of Dragon that you've already used. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get in to the traps. So for the traps, we're going to start with a single copy of There Can Be Only One. There Can Be Only One is really powerful in this deck because it's just an amazing floodgate, especially since we're handing our opponent fiends, beasts, and different cards like dragons, so we can really lock down our opponent with There Can Be Only One. And it's amazing to be able to use because all of our monsters are different types between our Mimighoul monsters and our copy of Fenrir, so it's very easy to be able to play around this card in this deck, but it can really lock down your opponent. We then play 2 copies of Mimighoul Room. I feel like 2 copies is really all you need for this card. You could play 3 copies, but I feel like 2 is fine, especially since we're playing Thrust in this deck, so we can get to it if we need to. But this card lets us special summon a Mimighoul monster from our hand or deck to your field or in face down defense position to your opponent's field. Then you can change a face up monster on the field to face down defense position. You can also manage this card from the graveyard and then target any number of Mimighoul monsters that you control and return them back to the hand so you can use them all over again, which is amazing. This card is really good in the deck as a 2-up, and I feel like 2 is really all you need. We then play 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Infinite Impermanence is definitely a 3-of in the build just to stop your opponent's monster effects and also lock down entire columns of spells and traps. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to start with a single copy of Master of Ham. This card is definitely a 1-of in the build, and it's actually our instant fusion target. And it has the ability, if this card is fusion summon or flip face up, you can special summon a flip monster from your hand or deck in face down defense position, which is amazing to be able to instantly get to your copy of Guard Dog to your side of the field or any of your Mimighoul monsters, which is just really nice to be able to do. Basically making your copy of Instant Fusion a basically E-Telly for the deck, which is really nice. We're getting you 2 monsters out on your side of the field. And if this card is in your graveyard, you can actually banish 2 flip monsters from your field, from face up field or the graveyard to special summon this card in face down defense position, but banish it when it leaves the field. And you only use effect of this card once per turn, but this card is amazing in the deck as a 1-of. And then play a single copy of the Bird. This card is just really good as a defensive card to help us going for our copy of Zeus, especially since all of our Mimighouls besides Master are level 1. We then play a single copy of Assembled Nightingale, again to help us make our copy of Zeus, 1 copy of Darren Magician for that additional material under our copy of Zeus, 1 copy of Zeus to be able to board wipe the field, which is just really nice to be able to do, 1 copy of Typhon because it's useful in just about any deck and it's just really good in this particular build to basically just summon out to your side of the field if you're going second. You can play a single copy of Underworld Goddess. Underworld Goddess is a great option to be able to out towers like boss monsters, and it's just a fantastic card in this deck. You can play a single copy of Access Code. Access Code is great to be able to pop multiple cards on the field, and it comes out absolutely massive. You can play a single copy of Nightmare Unicorn to spin stuff, 1 copy of Nightmare Phoenix to pop spells and traps, 1 copy of the Earth Charmer, since we do play a lot of Earths in this deck,
one copy of SP Little Knight, which could be changed out for Nightmare Cerberus for a more budget option if you guys want to, one copy of Moon of the Closed Heaven. This card helps us make our copy of Underworld Goddess, which is just really nice to be able to do. If you guys are unfamiliar with this card, it's generic. It just takes 2 effect monsters to make this card, and you get to target a face-up monster that your opponent controls, and this card points to. And this turn, if you're going to link summon a link 5 monster using cards that you control, you can also use that opponent's monsters that they control as a material, meaning you can use 2 of your opponent's monsters to be able to go in for your copy of Underworld Goddess, meaning you can use this card as one of them, or basically 2 materials, use one of your opponent's cards, or 2 of your opponent's cards using this and your copy of Underworld Goddess, and another monster that you control to step into your copy of Underworld Goddess, which is really good to be able to do. Then play a single copy of IP. IP is amazing in the deck as one of to help us step in for a copy of Unicorn or SP Little Knight. And then finally, one copy of Relinquished Anima. Anima is definitely a one of in the build to basically just eat the opponent's cards, which is just really nice to be able to do. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. This deck is super fun to be able to play. If you guys have not played Mimighoul yet, you should definitely give this deck a try. It's really fun to be able to play. It's relatively budget if you do change out those copies of Thrust like I suggested, but it's still really fun to be able to play because it's actually fairly budget out of the new set. And it's really fun because we finally have a flip effect archetype, which is really nice. So that's going to do for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Hit the bell and there's soon come part of Notification Squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.